Hi everyone, welcome to Diversity as Commodity. Sick. Okay. Thank you so much for coming. We're gathered here tonight and live stream from the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. Acknowledging that we are on stolen land is only the first step in moving us towards accountability and action, as many of us continue to benefit from the systems built on the displacement, erasure, and ongoing colonial violence against Indigenous peoples. There are many tangible ways in which we can support Indigenous sovereignty and ensure that our relationships with these lands and their host nations are based on reciprocity and respect. These include supporting Indigenous artists by purchasing their work, sharing their stories, crediting them, and paying them for their contributions, engaging with local Indigenous-led organizations and initiatives, and learning and communicating the true history of these lands beyond colonial narratives. I often think about how Normie Corp may not have existed if my friend and mentor Paisley Eva had not simply let me play with her DJ controller. As an experienced DJ and a person of Squamish descent, Paisley was already acutely aware of the exclusionary nightlife that Vancouver offered and simply wanted to change that by sharing her knowledge and skills with other QT BIPOC. And for a lot of marginalized people, and I believe the verbiage now is people from equity-deserving groups, we could never fathom being invited into certain spaces. All it takes is one person to bring them there and for them to reimagine what possibilities are available. Paisley's ethos has echoed throughout Normie. I myself have over 20 DJ children. Nylard at the door will be my latest one, and this weekend on Saturday, one of my Brazilian DJ babies, Marcelo, will be back-to-backing with me, and they've curated the Come to Brazil lineup. Thanks. When we founded Normie Corps, we started by having Zoom parties during COVID lockdown as a safer way to bring our friends together. And we knew that many QT BIPOC weren't being represented in Vancouver rave culture pre-pandemic. This included getting booked for opportunities to showcase their artistry and despite historically being cultural creators, innovators, and those leading the way. So we made it our mission to just showcase the taste and talents of QT BIPOC. And what we didn't realize was that at the time that we were participating in equity, diversity, and inclusion work, also known as EDI. And this brings us to why we are hosting this conversation tonight. Everyone on this panel and many of the people in this room have been politicized solely because of the bodies that they were born into. But when we advocate for ourselves and our communities, there's often an annoying implication that this is somehow EDI work, rather than an acknowledgement that we are trying to navigate and improve a world that was not built with us in mind. We've seen how powerful movements such as Me Too and Black Lives Matter were, and as more people have gotten on board, the language of equity, diversity, and inclusion have been co-opted by corporations and institutions to improve their public image. Tonight, we've invited a group of artists, organizers, and cultural workers to discuss the rise of EDI industrial complex, and together we'll explore how EDI initiatives can reproduce the very inequities that they claim to address. We are very grateful for the generous support that we've received for this event from the Multiculturalism and Anti-Racism Program through the Government of Canada's Department of Canadian Heritage, and without their contribution, this event would not have happened tonight. And thank you so much for joining us. As a reminder, this event is being live streamed, recorded, and will be uploaded on a future date. Our agenda for tonight, after introducing the panelists, will include a panel discussion, a Q&A portion where we invite the audience, both online and in person, to participate, and we'll assemble a collective vision board where we all imagine what the future looks like. After this, we'll have a short reflection period followed by a mingler where my Normie Corp co-founder, Heinz, will be DJing. And the people behind this panel, there's a lot of them. We'll start off with Bryn and Paige, who run this venue. They've worked tirelessly over the years to carve out a space for queer and trans people. They were very supportive of this event tonight, and we're very grateful. The staff working tonight include Emily, who is the menu manager, who flipped the room on very short notice, Eric, who's on sound, and Mandy, who is at the bar. While we are going to be talking about serious topics, we do invite you to respectfully turn up and tip generously at the bar. In the audience, we have our freakishly big-brained and very competent board of directors. Shout out to Nancy Lee, Christopher Smenjic, Allison Dunn, and Kevin Trung. Haina Wan is out of town, but she made the slides that we're watching today. I see a lot of our members at large here as well. Thank you so much for coming. Behind the camera, we have the production team, Rude Gang Entertainment, and their Department of RG Industry Services. This is a video production house based in the Greater Vancouver area of BC, and the media production company was founded by Afro-Indigenous interdisciplinary artist Diana Helson, aka Mama Rude Gal, and she is behind the camera tonight at the blue table over here. Yeah. My name is Vin, and I'm a co-founder of Normie Corps. A lot of what I do is informed by experiences of being othered. Like many of you, I've experienced various forms of bullying through my life, and this has inspired me to create spaces where anyone can just be themselves and have fun. And as DJ Fag of Color, I've been able to take my gay-ass music to sold-out shows around the world. I'm very thankful. My co-producer, Michelle Law, is moderating the live stream right now. She is also at the blue table. She's a queer, Vietnamese, Chinese, Canadian multi-hyphenate who works in many fields, including health equity, AV culture, and community organizing. Her professional and artistic practices are rooted in amplifying and underrepresented voices, particularly QT BIPOC, through both data-driven advocacy and immersive creative works. Beside her is Normie co-founder Paula Hines, who was here very early today to make sure that the sound, tech, and everything was set up well. Very thankful for that. My DJ mommy is here tonight, as we mentioned earlier, Paisley Eva. Due to unforeseen circumstances, Tatalia Nahaney could not make it here tonight, but her daughter, Tatalia Mun Nahaney, has stepped in. And this proud member of the Squamish Nation was a lead facilitator at Decolonizing Practices, where she designed and led workshops that supported organizations in unlearning anti-Indigenous racism and moving towards a meaningful change. She's also the co-founder of Hot Latch, a two-spirit indigiqueer night that celebrates community, identity, and joy. Due to her identity, her work is often framed as EDI or reconciliation, but she sees it first and foremost as an act of sharing Squamish teachings and advancing the ongoing process of indigenizing spaces and systems. Jalen Bastos, aka Batty Banks, is a scientist, artist, and community educator working at the intersection of urban wildlife and social justice. With a background in natural resource conservation from UBC and research experience in animal behavior and cognition, they study how city landscapes influence the ways animals move, adapt, and communicate. Their research and outreach through Zabuma Foolish views science and creativity, blending performance, humor, and critical ecology to make environmental topics more inclusive and accessible. Jalen's work has been featured by Science World BC, the David Suzuki Foundation, WildCamp Canada, among others. They are not new to panels and have spoken passionately about rethinking the conservation through intersectionality and accessibility, queer ecology, and storytelling in science communication, urban wildlife coexistence, and the community-based research, and decolonizing fieldwork and environmental outreach. Harmony Bonga is a disability justice advocate and educator. She has facilitated workshops and has dedicated a lot of her practice to improving accessibility in various spaces. Harmony's main focuses are harm reduction, de-escalation, and safety work, specifically within the queer and trans community. She works as a sober buddy here at the Birdhouse and organizes with Surrey Dag March and QC4P, which is the Queer Collective for Palestine. She also successfully expanded her harm reduction and accessibility services to new events like the Astro Arts Festival and the YVR Fat Clothing Swap. As a visibly disabled queer person of color, her intersectional perspective is central to her personal approach to accessibility, advocacy, activism, and harm reduction. Made in China is a Chinese, trans-femme, non-binary, multidisciplinary artist, event producer, activist, and artistic director at Queer-Based Media. Her artistic practice includes many mediums, most mediums I'd say, and it seems like a full circle event now that we're doing an EDI panel that's broadcasted on Zoom. Because some of my favorite performances of hers are the ones that she did at our Zoom parties during pandemic lockdown. I was really blown away by how she used basically anything that was available and like turned it out in these like amazing performances that were on a conference app. And beyond the web, she has been featured in Aesthetica Short Film Festival, Up in the Air Theatre, Revolver Festival, the Ray Festival, Push Festival, Vancouver Queer Arts Festival, Transform Cabaret, and Outstages. And if you're a regular at the Birdhouse, you've seen her perform at Man Up, House of Rice, and in her drag troupe, The Darlings. She is no stranger to panels, and we are so happy to have her here today. And finally, we have Chris Zoe, aka Stories of CZ, or Stories of CZ if you're ugly. They're our moderator tonight, and he has amassed a massive following, over 700,000 on TikTok, for his nuanced takes. Before he was a thought leader and a content creator, he was an academic. Chris holds a PhD in organizational psychology from U of T, and after publishing a handful of papers and feeling like he'd gotten the gist of what academic life is, he transitioned into the industry where he started working in medical school admissions, and then as an HR analyst, and then as a public policy researcher. While these roles may seem a bit disjointed in their tasks, they are all tied together with their strong focus on EDI, as organizations are striving to be inclusive and to adapt an increasingly diverse future. Today, my comrade of gay Chinese diaspora shares his random musings about life to a massive audience. I'll pass the mic over to him. I could see you twitch every time I misread something or
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have changed the bio. I didn't know this is a very corporate kind of bio. I apologize for that. I am actually shocked. Are you shocked at this turnout, or is this normal? Okay, yeah, because coming from Toronto, we say things about people from Vancouver. I know. I hear you guys don't think about us. We think about you all the time. And one of the things that I hear, we say is like, Vancouver, like they're a little, flaky. But I clearly need to make different friends. That's it. I learned recently that I'm only friends with Davy gays. Apparently that's not a ew, yeah, boo. Yeah, literally no, none of my friends showed up. So okay, so I'm just going to set the context for what this discussion is going to be about. So I promise you, I'm only going to be talking a little bit for now, and then everything else is going to be filled with the panelists who have a lot more interesting experience. You probably have heard me talk too much anyway through social media. So we have, unfortunately, started to see a wave of this pushback against EDI. And the immediate source of this pushback that we think to is that this pushback is coming from a lot of these conservative groups. A lot of this pushback is coming from the United States of America. I personally have no idea what's happening down there anymore. I don't even think they know what's happening down there anymore. But a lot of this problem, when we focus on the pushback, we're thinking about this as a problem coming from the other side, let's say. But the energy around EDI has also seemed to dampen from within as well. There's been some EDI fatigue, as we've seen time and time again, many people feeling shafted by these EDI initiatives that are aimed at helping these very groups that end up feeling like nothing really changed, even though they have invested a lot of work and emotional labor into these efforts. So today's conversation is going to be a little bit different from other EDI combos that we typically have, where we share our success stories, what has worked, and what advice do you have for others. And while it's important to celebrate our wins, the reality is that a lot of these initiatives don't always pan out the way we would like them to. A common complaint we hear all the time in EDI is that a lot of it feels performative, that it's just a tick box to check off for HR. People from marginalized groups often feel as though they were used and tokenized, and that their struggles were commodified purely for the benefit of certain individuals and corporations. So the goal today is for us to open an honest dialogue to share some of these failings, what hasn't worked and why. What are the things that we need to look for to make sure that genuine transformation is happening and it's not just about optics, so that we can avoid these pitfalls for ourselves to maximize our chances of actually seeing a real difference, to bring people back onto our side and believe in EDI again. Now, we acknowledge the diversity of approaches and lived experiences on the panel, and the panelists do not reflect the full spectrum of experience, and that we hope that the audience uses this opportunity to continue these critical conversations in their communities. EDI can only succeed through continuous collaboration and community engagement. So that's my spiel. So the first question, and this is going to be posed to each of the panelists here, I would like each of the panelists to give a little bit of their own background, or as much as you want. We have 20 minutes per question. So, and talk about how their work intersects with EDI, justice, and transformation. And we'd also love to hear why this conversation is personally important to you. So if you want, we can start with... Yeah, you want to start? Okay, Harmony.
Hi, I have notes in front of me, so if I'm looking down, it's only because that's my access need, because I'm really nervous right now. But thank you, everyone, for being here. Like Vin was saying, I work harm reduction in this facility, and I also do work in accessibility. I do accessibility audits and give suggestions for businesses to make themselves more accessible, and I work in disability justice. So within those three areas, they can be the mechanism for actual, like DEI, for actual equity, for actual diversity and inclusion, but now they're just like the shiny letters that corporations use, and that does us harm because as disabled people, like, we are anti-capitalist by nature. Our bodies do not conform to this normality. That is the word that has done a lot of people like me harm. And it's like whenever you meet people's needs, you're inviting them into your space, and if you're not meeting their needs, then you're excluding them. And I think, like, especially within accessibility, one of my main things that I try to teach people or try and let people know is that disabled people aren't the problem. The barriers around them are. So, like, physical, social, societal, any kind of bureaucracy that makes it hard for us to do the things that other people can do easily. Does that answer the question? I feel like.
Yeah. Can you expand a little bit more? I just thought this was mind-blowing when you said that disabled bodies are, by their very nature, anti-capitalist. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so through Sins Invalid, which is a black and brown organization that uses performative art to teach disability justice. And disability justice is like the activism work that disabled people and our allies are doing to just make environments better for us, make suggestions. People that can go into a space, like I'm a great guinea pig. I can go into a space and spot accessibility issues, but I can also do whatever I can. Like, I can't usually do steps, but that's only one. So that's totally doable. Sorry, I lost my thought, but I think that's all.
That's okay. That's okay.
Oh yeah, the disabled bodies aren't anti-capitalist. Yeah, so Sins Invalid developed the 10 principles for disability justice, and one of those is an anti-capitalist rhetoric by our nature, because, you know, the normal person can get up and walk 10 steps, whereas people who roll, people who need mobility devices, people who are confined to bed are perceived as like other, that it's like a degradation down from normal. And that's just how we live naturally. That's the way that we were born. That's like the disabilities that happen to us because of trauma and different things. So, like, we don't follow the system where we work, we earn money for society, we spend, and we can do all the tasks of daily living, which is another term that, like, bureaucracy likes to use for, like, can you do the activities of daily living? And a lot of us can't, and there's no shame in that, because we're doing, I think, the best that we can do. So yeah,
okay, that's interesting. Thank you. Paisley?
Yeah, I think I'll start with like why it's important, like specifically like here with these people. Like, I've had the pleasure of knowing these people in community and actually seeing the active change that their work has done to change the city, to change this community. But at the same time, I've really seen the ways that it's harmed these people as well, whether it's through community, whether it's through, you know, just the burnout, etc., you know, but still we show up, you know, and I think that's so important. And on the other side, looking at my work, I think I have a really I've had a really interesting point of view because I've been working in decolonization for about 8 years now. And when I started, it was a really fringe thing, and I started learning about it in my family and in grassroots. I'm really lucky to come from a family of activists. And then I got to see the commodification of it, and really it's turned into an industry. So, you know, at the beginning of my work, it's early adopters who are interested in learning, who want to change, who want to unlearn anti-racism. And then now it's, you know, quite corporatized. And again, it's one of those things that capitalism kind of, you know, like puts its ugly head in and really changes it. So by the end of that work, and the reason I left is because it really became this check mark, and I was working with these organizations that, you know, had people who were like really racist and really harmful, but had to be there, you know, or even seeing how it's affected Indigenous communities of, you know, different decolonial facilitators fighting over gigs, because we still have this idea where, you know, not many of us get opportunities. We do come from poverty, so a gig is a gig. And it was just really interesting to watch that, and then for me to have to like step back and whether it's burnout, you know, and then really find myself in it. And it's just interesting, like I feel like we have these words that are always changing. Like Vin said, you know, what's our new word for like BIPOC or person of color? Like, as an Indigenous person, I'm 29. I think we were like Aboriginal, I've been First Nations, I've been Indigenous. Like, we're constantly having to kind of live under these labels. So that's kind of where like my work fits into it. And I think I'm still trying to figure out, you know, where I fit or where I want to be in these conversations now in my life.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, that's also like just real quick. Thank you for that part at the beginning, because I was just like really kind of you for that recognition, and yeah, just, you know, really honored to be on the panel with all of you all incredible workers. Also, hi everyone. My name is Jalen. I think you've heard that. I'm not going to do a whole big spiel. I think the question was like, what is your relation with this work? Mm-hmm. So I kind of come from it from like 3 angles. I used to do like very specific justice, equity, diversity and inclusion work for the Faculty of Forestry when I was doing my master's at UBC. And that was through a couple of very like direct initiatives under the umbrella of Forestry Read. So things like dedicated workshops, podcasts, and like a book club where we would like analyze specific sources and then talk about it. But so coming at it from a little bit of that angle, and then from a lot of the work that I do outside of drag is around knowledge mobilization. So how do we get a lot of the information that has been like hoarded or kept by universities and by like these higher institutions of education, and how do we like redistribute that, right? And how do we make it accessible? How do we make it free? How do we make it just readily available for people that we're in community with? And I do mainly that with children and like youth, and they get it pretty quickly. So I would say that side of things where I'm coming from is like a fairly straightforward side of it. And then something where I guess maybe most of you maybe know me from is the like drag world. So a lot of the equity, diversity, and inclusion work, I guess you could say, that I do through drag is mainly around just really uplifting and creating opportunities for queer Black artists in the city. I just know from my experience coming into the city as like a Black drag performer that there were a lot of things that I was like, hey, this is wild. And so I didn't even initially start off this like role in the drag community wanting to necessarily do this work, but more so just seeing things that I knew were either harmful or wrong or made people feel uncomfortable, and that not only did that apply to me, but people in my community. So wanting to change that to make it more accessible, and then over time wanting to also create just more opportunities for people like me, right, who wanted to be able to share their art of drag with the city of Vancouver, but in a way that was like genuine and also safe and felt equitable and intentional. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
Thank you. Kendall?
Hi. First off, my dog is here and she has separation anxiety. I can hear her whining. And now I'm like, should I just bring her up here to sit with me? Yeah. Dean, do you mind bringing her up here? Oh, she's in the staff room? If she's over there, that's fine. I just want to make sure that Dean is not annoyed. I'm being also, sure, that's fine. I'm being asked to sit over here. Sorry to derail the conversation. Like, my child. she's distraught. Thank you. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, hi. I do drag primarily, and I think that getting into any sort of community work or DEI work has been through that. I started doing drag in 2016, and the scene was very homogenous, at least what I was seeing, and it was very white, and it was very cis. And so I think I started this work. It became important to me because I wanted to see people like me. I wanted to tell stories that were culturally relevant to me. And then I realized the double-edged sword of representation, which is being, open to all sorts of tokenization and abuse, and it's sort of lonely. And so I think that shifted then to trying to build tables instead of trying to have a seat at certain tables. So I'm an event producer as well. I run a trans-centered kink and sex and dance party called Switch. And just as an example, is like there were no spaces that were trans-centered, that were centered around like trans joy and sexuality, and that felt safe. And rather than try to, ask really nicely to the buff, like conventionally attractive cis men to make space for trans women and trans men and trans non-binary people, it was like, why don't I just build it myself? And so I think that's kind of the impetus of my work and where it's gone. Same thing with I work in film as well, so just telling stories that other people would not give us the time of day. Yeah,
go ahead.
So I feel like I was really down and out about the effort that I gave into kind of a corporate world, but on the other hand, like the little effort I've given into the queer world, I've been DJing for 10 years now. It was very white and cis DJs only. It was pretty hard to find a night that like wasn't a white guy playing like really bad disco, And it's like just sharing that skill that I love, which is such a Squamish practice, with people, with Finn, and seeing like that spread and seeing just how the DJ community has diversified. Like we have so many amazing nights. We have like Normie, we have been in Pow, I see Amena in the back, like people who have just taken and like changed the scene to now like every night, like we're so lucky there's like 10 different nights that we can go to all run by, queer people with their passion. So I think that there is that thing as well of just like finding where to give your effort, and when you find the right place, it can just grow into this grow into this beautiful thing.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
No need to ask me. Just keep.
Just keep going.
I'm interested.
I love
so,
that.
Yeah.
No, I'm used to having to ask permission, and I think that comes from a culture where, as a person of color who grew up in like middle class white Langley society, and then worked in like a law firm where I wasn't even out as being a queer person. I think like those environments where like people are treating my lived experience, my lived expertise as like a product that can be sold and packaged up in like 1 hour concise lunch and learns to learn about accessibility, and then they're asking you to be in every single picture because they want a person of color there, and they make sure to say that I'm queer, so then they get to tick another box, and that feels so exploitive. Like that feels, and I am running out of patience for that, honestly. And the way that like when you were talking about decolonizing work, it's moving away from whiteness and like that hierarchical structure that has like gay kept funds, or these things that the things they promise to get you in front of the people, they pay you and they think that that's the work, and that's not the work. But it's tidy for them, and people love a good accessibility checklist, and I tell them there's no checklist. There's hundreds of disabilities and hundreds of accommodations, and you won't know you won't know about every disability when it comes to what they need, because we're not opening space where it's safe for people to ask for that, and that comes like at a great cost as well. So it's just stuck inside of the DEI mindset that we can just be checked off and then left alone. We're living people and we have needs, every single one of us, and like when those needs, when we're made to feel shameful about it, we lose. Like I'm leaving Surrey Dyke March because of being pushed out by white organizers, and it feels awful. And this is even happening at grassroots levels. So if it's happening at grassroots levels and I'm not going to do corporate work anymore, then we need allies to show up and talk about disability. And I have my walker, I deck it out with like lights and stuffed animals. I let kids play with it. It's like, this is a mobility device that is a very intrinsic part of me, and I don't feel ashamed at all. It's my freedom. It's my legs, you know?
And I think just to because you said a lot of really incredible things, but this one point of like how this work can be so exhausting, right, and so extractive, and I think something that's really like ties to also something that you said earlier, where it was like one of the reasons that it can be so extractive and so exhausting is because you have these people that you have to work with, right? These people that are permanently installed in a position in which makes it more of a fight, makes it more of honestly of a battle to try and get your point across, to try and have these conversations, to try and advocate for yourself and the things that you think that need to be implemented with regards to change. Like with in regard to my own experiences, like in academia, that was like really why I had to step away from doing DEI work in academia, because it was incredibly extractive, right? It was just like, how do we make sure that each month we have like a workshop that we can advertise, or like a book that we can say that people should be reading, right? But how do we go beyond that and actually implementing change? Like I would remember that there would be like meetings that we would have with the he's like the dean of justice, equity, and diversity and inclusions for the faculty of forestry, and being like, okay, well, what if we made it so that, you know, like people, tenured professors actually had to attend these workshops? Like, what if we made it there was like some sort of mandatory element where there wasn't just like, you get to choose when and where you want to participate in justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. It's like, how do we make this more of a concerted effort? And I just remember so many times like just suggesting, being like, well, why don't we just simply make it so that instead of citing the same like white men who are the founders of conservation, like why don't we make it so that the mandate is that you have to like have a variety source of like citations that you're pulling from, right? Like a variety network where it's not just pulling on, this is the curriculum that I've taught for years, right? It's like, how do you actually make it expansive, more inclusive, and more applicable to the people that are in your class, right? But that was just in the world of academia, because I think that ultimately this work, it can be more exhausting and extractive depending on the environment that you're doing it in and depending on the people that you're doing it with and ultimately for, right? Like, I know that speaking for myself, like doing it predominantly for my community within academia felt so exhausting, and particularly because I was the only Black person in my faculty, right? But it's that work, while it's still exhausting, when I'm doing it like with youth groups, for example, it's not as extractive, it's not as demanding emotionally. And when I'm doing that work within the world of drag, for example, it is still extractive and it's still demanding, but I feel like I have a little bit more of a network of support that I did not have in academia, which makes it a little bit more endurable, if that makes any sense. Yeah.
Just to add on that, and a question is like, how many times of us like we like do the lunch and learn, we spend this 2-hour workshop talking to these people, like really sharing knowledge, like sharing, you know, our point of views, and at the end you have someone raise their hand, they're like, okay, but what do I do? Give me a list of what to do. And you're like, I just told you for 2 hours, like what to do. Like, where were you? Like, I feel like we've all had, that is such a common question I hear all the time, of them just really wanting to, you know, spell out, okay, well, how do I decolonize? Okay, well, how do I, you know, how should I implement to like make this space quote unquote safer, you know? And then you're really just like, where have you been? Like, yeah.
When we were talking earlier, we mentioned, I'm always going to call you Batty. I'm really sorry.
That's fine. My government name right now is like also stressing me out. I'm like,
when we were talking about delivering the information that people are literally asking us for, we have to do it with positivity. We have to do it with like all of our energy that's like welcoming. Even if we're talking about something that was literally one of the worst moments of our life, we have to make it presentable and nice, or else not only am I the angry brown person, I'm also the ungrateful disabled person, because I'm wasting the opportunity to make it better for everyone. but you go home with that and you take that home to your family and your friends and they try and help you, but that's a numbers game. If I've talked 100 people at different workshop on disability justice and they've ignored everything I said, the 5 people in my world cannot heal me from that.
Kendall, did you want to add to that?
Oh, I had a point just about what Paisley was saying, and I think that when it comes down to like when I hear those kind of things of like, well, what can I do? I think what people are asking is like, how can you make what I need to do easier, so that I don't actually have to put any like relationship building into it. I don't have to like lean into network care. Like I don't have to like invest anything. I just want to be able to like share the post or like. Yeah. So, and I think that's just like maybe a greater kind of contextual issue about like how powerless a lot of people feel. But yeah, it's frustrating because it really is sort of like you've put in so much work into teaching people something, but they just want it to be easier.
Yeah. We're all from such different sectors, and we're all hearing the same thing. Yeah.
But I'm also. Oh, sorry. I was just going to say really quickly too, it's also funny because I'm sure you've also been in this situation where you're like, okay, well, let me bite, and you do give very tangible, very very clear actionable items, and they're like, well, I don't want to do that. So I feel as though it's just a very interesting when
you're like share your wealth and power.
I will admit, hearing all of you talk about this, I'm very much guilty of everything that you talk about coming from academia, corporate. A lot of my involvement with EDI has not been, admittedly, like grassroots, organic. I got paid for a lot of the work, so it's good to hear about these kind of lived experience, because I think a lot of times we focus so much on these metrics. We will focus on publications, we focus on wanting more funding, writing grants, and we forget that there are people that we're actually trying to help, and yet we rarely hear from the actual people. So on a related note, we talk a lot about performative activism and its harm that its harm. But I would like to know, how do you know if something is performative or if it's genuine? I feel like we all have that kind of sneaking suspicion, but how do you describe that suspicion concretely? If someone is reaching out to you for some opportunity, what are some signs that you look for?
I think, like, speaking for me as a trans person, like, being asked to be a part of a gig or an educational programming or whatever, what have you, if I ask, especially if it's like in a, it's like West Vancouver, or it's like in Surrey, or it's like, somewhere that I have to get to, and I'm not going to take transit in drag, but out of safety, like to somewhere, this is like that, I will reinforce that I'm not against transit whatsoever, but just out of safety. And if I ask for, the funds to cover transportation or something like this, and is there any sort of pushback on that, that's such a red flag, because they want me to speak on my experience, but they're unwilling to invest anything in order to actually protect me and my experience. And I think that also comes down to like performing, at a show and being like the one trans performer, and if I don't know, I get sick, or this happened to me a few years ago, like I had someone pass away and I couldn't do the show, and I asked if they could still pay me it's not that much money, and I just didn't hear anything back. And I'm not saying that means everyone should get paid whether you show up or not, although I do think if you're booking people for their trans experience, and that's like a very real reality, is like, as a performer, I don't have healthcare like the outside of MSP, I don't have sick days, I don't have what have you. And so, especially when it's like literally someone like me just passed and you're not willing to cover like the $200 for me to be at home to cry, is like, that kind of stuff is like, oh, you just want to tick the box.
$200, that's like a lunch. A lunch for like 4 people. Oh my god.
Yeah, and I'm speaking on like not just like a local producer. I'm speaking on like they're like being funded, like they had grants and stuff. Like it's like
yeah.
There's no way to tell for me. I mean, I feel like I mask so much when I'm doing educating that I can't really notice it while I'm doing it, but when I get home, I'll unpack it. But one of the things that I have noticed about gigs or side jobs or hustles or whatever method I'm trying to make family so I can pay rent or make money so I can support my family and pay rent and eat food and do all of the things that I need to do, is are they asking me my access needs? Are they being like, what do you need? Like, well, I work at Bird, so Pride is wild. So I asked my boss for a nap room. I was like, I need a room where I can lay down for 20 minutes and just kind of process and get my body back in shape to be able to somehow do the work, because I love working in harm reduction, just helping people in little ways, giving them a bottle of water, a piece of gum, and people are so thankful when they feel seen and they feel taken care of. So yeah, are my access needs being met? Because if my access needs are being met, there's no hope for the participants, and that sucks. Like, to be in an environment where you feel like you have to fight to just get in the door, and literally, like, my walker is 32 inches, so that means that I need a door frame to be able to get through, and that includes like an accessible washroom, because everyone has the right in any space to eat, to use the washroom, to drink, to feel safer. Yeah, so that's it.
Kind of agree with you. It's like kind of really hard to tell, but I think for me, there's always like little clues, kind of like, or hints. Like, I think you kind of touched on this too, kind of, where it's like the timing really is important, and looking at the makeup of the question, right? So it's like within the world of drag, let's say, from my perspective, like when I first started, especially, a lot of the times I would only get asked to be a part of shows during February, during Black History Month, right? And so then and there, the timing of that obviously is suspicious, because I'm like, well, what are your intentions? Is it so that you can have Black people in your show during Black History Month, where you traditionally only have an all-white cast, or maybe if any, a person of color? But for me, right, within the world of drag, it can be tricky because the timing of things isn't always super clear. Like, it's not always just like, oh, because it's February, I want you in the show. So I think it's something that you touched upon too, where it's like you have to look at the makeup of the production as well to kind of be able to tell the intentions. Like, in my case, like, if I'm the only Black person on the cast, I'm like, are we doing this just to check a box, right? How many other people do you see as valid of having this opportunity? Do you see as worthy of paying for this work, right? And for this artistry? And I think that, at least within the world of drag here in Vancouver, we've started to see a shift towards more equitable productions. However, it can still be much better, and I think that shift has come at a great cost as well. To, I think, a lot of us personally, but also to a lot of people who are on this panel, who are primarily doing this work of trying to really force production space and opportunities for people who have been traditionally excluded from them. But outside of drag, I think it's like, it's really, yeah, it's really tricky to tell too within the world of academia, because I think even something as innocuous as like, oh, well, this is just the way I teach my course, and these are just the sources and the citations that I have. I feel like there shouldn't be any reason why, like, me as a Black person has to go like 2, 3, 4 times into the extra effort in order to find the sources that showcase success for myself within this field. So within the field of animal behavior cognition specifically, which was like what I studied, there was like no conversation, no discussion, no mention really of one of the founders of the field, who is Charles Henry Turner. And he was a Black man who helped like literally found the field of animal behavior and cognition. But for me, I discovered him because I was doing this DEI work for the faculty and creating these workshops and opportunities and trying to find these different and external sources, right, of information that showcase that Black people
people have been contributing to the world that I am actively trying to participate and learn more about and engage with, and that they've been successful in this, right? And that's something that I think touches on to this idea of like representation and why that is so important, and why that so many of us have felt this need to maybe be a part of productions or jump into these opportunities, and why it can lead to these sort of tokenistic situations is because at the end of the day, we do want to be represented. We do want to feel as though we can be successful in whatever path we take. And I think that that is where it gets a little tricky, and not only like determining, oh, well, what is the motive behind my inclusion or the ask for the inclusion here, but also is it like, do you take the opportunity here to be that representation or to not? And then we can talk about the nuance of colorism and gender and how that also plays in your decision making as well. But that's like a whole other panel discussion. So yeah, I don't want to take on.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's so interesting. I feel like when I kind of came up as a DJ and like the height of my popularity, I mean, I feel very lucky to be able to like come up with other DJs. But I remember probably in like the, I don't know, like 2016, 2017, I was on a lot of panels about like women in music, like diversity, women in music, and it was always like me and like the same community leader. It was Shanique Kelly from Level Up, genius, like so lucky to be on those panels with her. But also they were always so harmful because it was just me, her, and like white women in music, and it was almost like funny, like because at this point I think there was like 10 panels in a year. And it's not that me and Shanique don't deserve to be on these panels, but there are also, like, we don't deserve to have the burden of have to speak on, you know, all of this. And at the same time, like, there's so many genius Indigenous women in music, so many genius Black women in music, you know, that deserve to be on these panels alongside of us. So it was just that tokenism, and that always led to these conversations that just fell flat and felt icky at best, and at worst there was points where like we were caused harm on these panels.
Yeah, I remember, I think maybe this is a common kind of feeling when you're first venturing to EDIs, that you want to do good, you want to believe in the goodness of people, the first rule that people always tell you is, you know, you probably don't want to work with an all-white team. I was like, no, what's wrong with that? You know, like they're trying their best, and you work in an all-white team, and after that, never again. I'm sorry, I will never do that ever again. I will always look at the composition of the team to make sure that they're actually, the people that they're helping are actually being represented on that team, and it is hard to kind of capture why that is and all what all those frustrations are. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could add to that, I feel like. Two things.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I research queer history, and I do like cute little TikToks. And when I first started researching, it was all white-centric facts. I had to dig so deep to find queer Asian representation. And I think that's a purposeful thing that white culture has done and continues to do, even if they have like good intentions. And that's very rare as well. Even if they have good intentions, if it's done under a false pretense of performative tokenization, that's not okay. And I don't think people really know that, because for one, I have to take the job. Like there's only a few jobs in my life that I have said no to because I have to take the job because I'm poor. Yeah. And like the way that poverty is criminalized, and the way that racial bias affects, you know, even the trajectory of your life. Like there's so many things that are a purposeful part of society that not enough people are getting mad at, you know?
Yeah.
I do want to also, it just came to mind because I looked out and I saw Skim, my drag brother, an iconic drag king in this city. But just like, yeah, maybe sometimes not knowing if you're being booked for like a tokenized aspect, if it's performative or not, but there's nothing worse than finding out and it's like too late. And you're just like, we had done a show together where on the way, and it was in Victoria, and our show was about our experiences as trans racialized people. And on the way, we found out that my name was spelled wrong, incorrectly, like my name, my human name, and also my drag name on all of the copy. And then the producer of the festival just like wouldn't speak to Skim, like only would speak to me. And then our tech was a white person with dreadlocks. And it was just like, by that point, it was so comical that like every piece of the puzzle was like, oh, we're only being programmed because we're like an edgy trans Asian play where our festival can have like these trans people talk about how horrible racism is.
Oh,
Meanwhile,
gosh.
like there's literally, and like that person had like, there's Korean in the show, and then they were like, oh, what's the part where you're speaking Japanese?
Oh my god.
It was just horrible. Like, it's just such a train wreck. What are we doing?
Yeah.
They should be embarrassed by that, honestly.
But just like such a bad feeling because you go out thinking like, oh, this is a great opportunity, like, you know, being compensated decently, like a new experience. And really hoping that the audience is going to be receptive, but you just like shouldn't have to think like, oh, the people who are hosting me are going to be the ones that are causing me harm.
And I don't know if you've ever like experienced this yourselves, but like when you're hired by friends or when I'm hired by friends, I don't do the values alignment check because I think that I know them well enough to know that I'm going to be kept safer in that space. And then to try and have those tough conversations with friends, you end up losing friendships. And that's only because we're stating what we need and the ways that whatever production it is or event, like they're trying, I get that, but we're the ones who are suffering because they're not trying hard enough. And it's not to say that you need to be doing accessibility 100% all of the time in all the ways, because with that comes a price tag and like a shift in the way you're thinking about disability as being like a bad thing. Instead of seeing us, for one, 25% of the world self-identifies as being disability. We are an economic force. If they want to use capitalism like to their advantage, I think that including disabled bodies can be advertised to them, but again, soul-sucking.
I mean, sometimes also though, I feel like in our communities, and speaking from my own experience, like I've known gigs were going to be harmful, and I've still had to come take it. You know, like as Indigenous people, we have some of the lowest equity in Canada, and like we like come from a fairly lower class family. Like there's just like I don't have a savings. My family doesn't own houses. These are all things that were done done by colonialism. So you have to say yes to those gigs, even when you know they're going to be harmful.
And like that's one of the reasons I'm so thankful to be part of this and that Normie Corp is doing this and that you are all showing up and you're all listening. I love that you're here, but this isn't the work. The work is what you do critically afterwards when you like look at disability.
So if you don't mind sharing, when you experience this kind of harm, how do you deal with it? How do you deal with it at home, or no, you just sit with it?
I think it's kind of tricky because it's like, how do you deal with something that's consistent, right? It's like it's nonstop, and I think through just by manner of like existing, a lot of us are continuing to do this work, not necessarily because we like wake up every day and we're like, yeah, but it's more so like, oh, they were just like a manner of being, and I think that it's incredibly draining, so you need to find the ways that your cup can be replenished, but it's just also then really tricky when the ways in which your cup is replenished is tied to like bookings, for example, or shows or drag, and where you are then put in more nuanced situations where these things are then brought up again. So I think it really depends on like the person, but I know for me it's like being either with myself or with very specific people, doing tasks outside. So that's like, just for me, that's like one of the only ways I feel like now I can replenish my cup. It's very cheap. It's free most of the time to go outside. Well, at least here in Vancouver. That's a larger story about accessibility, like accessing the outdoors, which we could talk about. But just to go outside and just to be with people who can like help replenish my cup. But yeah, it can be tricky right now.
Yeah, I feel like I'm really lucky. Like I live on my territories. I can go back to my community. I have my family, but I also have like my chosen family. Like me and Vin will just rant and roll our eyes for like an hour, or then just, laugh about really stupid things, and I feel like I have really lucky to have both those sides, but at some points it still feels like really impossible. And I'm sure all of us have been told by someone like, oh my God, you're so strong for doing this work, and you're like, ah! Well, you could see me inside.
While falling apart and becoming ill multiple times a year.
Yeah.
Well, your body just acts against you because it's just so exhausting.
Yeah, exactly.
There's this quote, and I'm not going to get it right because it's not written down in my pile of notes that I haven't even looked at, really. But one of the things is, like, I don't want to be celebrated for being strong and resilient. I want softness. So 2 things. It's like, you need an outlet for your anger as a disabled person, because anger is a healthy emotion. That like shows you that your rights are being taken away and it's not okay. And I've always been like fascinated by laws, and not like the anti-carceral. I don't know what it is, but I like the story that legislation is telling us. And I was born the same year as the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and that's like the highest law of this land, which is not a thing because it's not Canada's law. But I think I've been using like the 14 times that I've been kind of harmed by different situations, I'm turning them into, what does this look like as a legal case? Like what was it that I was denied? What are my different ways that I can try and hold that person accountable, or deal with it all on my own? And I have certain rules. Only specific people. There's 3 people I can be around when that doesn't work, and I'm suffering, and I'm in bed, and I can't move, and we're in crisis situations. There's 3 people in my life. I have a rule that no white people are allowed around me when I'm in crisis, because anything they do will trigger me, and that's not fair to my friends. But they also are like the friends that I could say white people suck, and they'll understand that, and I don't have to apologize for that. But an outlet is great. Like some of the dance parties we hold here, you can't like find words for the magic that we create when it's cutie BIPOC disabled people living without the application, or without white people around to make us feel unsafe, or so outlets are necessary, but also soften whenever you can. Crying is great, poetry is great. Sad music, breakup songs, they work for other things as well, because it's still that emotion where you've lost something.
Yeah, hearing a lot of this, I'm just thinking about all my previous work, and I'm like, damn it, I wish I heard this while I was working in EDI, because when I host these panel discussions in a corporate setting, it's all scripted. Everything's always written now. You have to get it run by your HR team, PR team. Make sure that everything is not going to get, and nothing's going to, you say, is going to get you in trouble. But like, these are the conversations that I personally needed to improve my work and think about things outside of just what I see on paper. Did you want to?
Well, I just think it's interesting because, something, this kind of like thread that it's been touched upon a little bit throughout the conversation, but this like idea of like how restrictive this work can be depending on the space. And I think that like when you think about our experiences in academia or within like corporations, right, I think that those are incredibly white centric spaces, right? And when we look at the ways in which white culture has, or white supremacy more specifically, demands control, purity, communication in a very specific way, right? I think that when you look at those cultural elements of whiteness and how they're embedded in education, how they're embedded in our workplace, right? That's what feels so combative and especially so abrasive when you're trying to do this work, is because you're doing this work within systems that aren't designed to allow it to happen, right? And this work is technically antithetical to these systems when you try and unpack the very values of corporate Canada or corporate America or academia largely, right? And so I think that is like something that's very interesting around like how white supremacy makes this work very challenging.
I think that one of the things I've learned, even within smaller groups, is like, that safety and conformity. If I'm doing the thing that I'm supposed to be doing, then I'm going to be kept safer. And I think, I can't remember where I heard this. There's a really good book called White Tears, Brown Scars. And they talk about how, within white sectors with white people who are in the top positions and whatnot, and it's not just white people, but like when you bring up that there's a bias going on, you're never allowed to imply a racial bias. You have to relate it to power, or you have to relate it to privilege. But even that is hard, because one of the asks that I do in my workshop is for people to check their privilege, and it's literally just check boxes, because privilege in itself is not a bad thing. It's like when it's misused, when it's being exploitive to other people, like that's when privilege comes up and becomes something that is now dangerous to us. But we can't always say that. And if we do say it and we get it wrong and people come for us, then it's like, well, now I have to deal with all of that, all of the fragility and all of that instead of my own problem. So it's kind of easier just to not say anything at all and use our support groups, use like suicide hotlines, use anything that you need so that you can feel good about who you are.
Yeah, speaking up is always kind of like the difficult part always for me. Even in academic research, people from marginalized groups, when they speak up, it typically hurts their career. That's just the way it is. It happened to me. I didn't think it was going to happen. It still happened to me. I was like, I'm like the most privileged of the POCs, and it still happened to me. So must happen much on a much worse level to everyone else. But this one, we're going to wrap up, but this one is going to be probably the toughest question, the one that I don't really even know how to answer. But now that we've talked about some of a lot of the issues around performative activism, remedy, the solution, this is the part that we always struggle with. We're probably not going to find the answer from these discussions, but these are important discussions to have nevertheless. What are some of your thoughts around this? How do we remedy performative activism? How can we reshape it in a way that is more honest and authentic?
Tough.
Correct. That's why I'm sitting here.
I'm exhausted already.
It's really tricky being like how to reframe performative activism, because in and of itself it's like, well, you have to first be able to identify that it is performative, which is one of the issues we were talking about before. But if, let's say we have done that and we're like, okay, let's just address this performative activism issue, right, more largely at large, which is this idea that you can perform activism as something to do rather than a way of being or a way of operating with not only yourself but in community with others. And so I think, at least for me, when I think of like, okay, well, how do we shift it? I think it does come a lot down to creating more of a culture of accountability, right? Not necessarily upholding people that are engaging in, virtue signaling and these versions of performative activism, but being more honest and genuine with what we expect, what we demand, and what we need people to do in terms of actually showing up for us. With regard to myself, when I'm talking about that, I mean, how do you actually show up for Black people? How do you engage in anti-Blackness? How do you engage in anti-racism? And how do you create that culture for yourself and for your own community, for your own family, right? And so I think that is one of the big ways that we can do it. I think another way is like, unfortunately, at least this is my perspective, there are many different routes to doing this, but I think it needs, an element needs to be taken offline. Like, I think it's just so much of it is through what is visually presented, and it's like, it really limits people from doing the work within their own communities and within like shared spaces that they go to, right? Be it at the club, be it at, the restaurant that you visit all the time and everyone's name. Like, I think it's just like being able to be more comfortable jumping into these kind of conversations and this work within your own community, with the people that you share space with, is going to be a way that we shift this away from like performance to actually like rooted in individual work with one another. Yeah.
I don't think it's our responsibility to change performative allyship. I think all of us here, we show up, we do the work, we do it with a whole heart, we create these spaces and dialogues. But at the end of the day, I've always thought of this work as like invitational and not coercive. So you're really going to lose your energy, you're really going to burn out by trying to convince people that decolonization is more than putting that acknowledgement in your email bio, or that their allyship should go beyond sharing that social media post that everyone is sharing. And you will get through to those people, and you will change those people, and you won't change others.
Yeah, I'm going to read from my thing because I can't remember my answers anymore. But following Paisley, you have to love it into existence. I was like, this question is so hard because there are sometimes small pockets where you work an event and you see people asking for their needs and having them met. You see feedback being given that's negative, and the conference people to immediately withdraw that person from the conference and apologize for not doing due diligence. And I think on panels that are, sorry. Yeah, we ask people to talk on panels like this. We check in on our disabled friends. This is we all know someone who is disabled, and if a non-disabled person, and that's even hard because a lot of people don't believe that they can call themselves disabled because they don't meet the typical whatever the bias or stereotype is. We're not disabled enough, so we don't get to call ourselves that. And I feel again, as a person of color, as a queer person, as a disabled person, when I came out as a lesbian, I'm not a lesbian anymore because gender, but I was not allowed with the cool lesbians because I had a child. And I was I don't want to be part of that. And then within my Filipino friend group or whatever, I was always seen as you're half, so it's okay you don't know the language and you don't eat the food. But the disabled community was the only one that accepted me with open arms. We don't gatekeep. We understand that people have needs, and if the change needs to happen, it can happen slowly with one person, with one access need met. It's just opening yourself up to being curious and creative. And doing it only in spaces where you feel like you can. If you have to do something performative, if you have to, I could probably read off the entire 10 principles of disability justice, but that's not going to do anything if the people don't want to help that and elevate and empower us to self-determine what we need.
Yeah, I think my thoughts, adding on to Paisley, it isn't our responsibility to check performative allies. And then I think all of you touched on this, but just in order to create truly equitable spaces, I think is kind of where my mind then goes to. And I think it always comes down to, with everything else, is better communication. People just really need to learn communication skills, and it's totally we don't have a lot of great models for that, and it's specifically with conflict. And conflict is really difficult, and it's something that I think, going back to online stuff, is that people feel really emboldened to come after people online or to pursue conflict online for everyone to see, and 99% of the time it's no one's business. And it doesn't help to have those conversations where you're not actually looking at their face, you're not actually hearing and seeing and feeling their humanity in order to actually get to the bottom of where do you go from there? Does some sort of mediation need to take place? Is there an accountability process? Do you even have values aligned to do that together, et cetera, et cetera? And I think, yeah, the bottom line, I'm just I don't know what, just be nicer to each other. People really just need to stop being dicks.
Yeah.
I think even within our own communities, creating more actual spaces, I have been booking Hot Latch, which is a queer indigenous party for, I think we're 7 or 8 years now. And I look back on those early lineups and they're really cis, they're pretty white passing, and those were the people that were, even in our own communities, those were the easy people to book. Those were the people that I saw, because even in our own communities, we still have supremacy, And then when we started, booking, more trans, more Afro-Indigenous, they were the best performers. And, they're just not getting booked because of these systems that even we have to unlearn ourselves.
I mean, I think even with event spaces where you want to go there, but it's if there is an event that isn't accessible, don't go to it. Don't support it. But it's so hard. There was a disability drag show here on the 20th, and I didn't go because they didn't have a mask policy. And that was just because my friends were hey, some disabled people can't leave their house because they are so immunocompromised that they should not have to risk their lives to go to a drag event. And the producer was it's not masks. It's not mask mandatory. And that, like, in solidarity, I felt like I had to, like, stand up, and people can do that. You can look at shows of lineups and say, hey, is this accessible? Hey, like, what's the intention behind having Indigenous or Black or BIPOC people there? Like, if it's being marketed, you know, if you're on a poster, then that signals to a Black person or a trans person that should be safe for other Black and trans people. And that's misinformation, and that does more harm than good.
Lots to think about. Definitely made a lot of mistakes now that I've heard.
I feel like, I don't know. I feel like we are all in this kind of similar boat where it's like, this is exhausting, but we don't want it to not happen, right? It's like this work, the grind, quote unquote, needs to continue, because it's like the alternative is worse than, right? It's like apathy is worse. And I feel as though maybe, I don't know, I can't speak to all of y'all experience, but I feel like I have been driven in the past to apathy when the setting for the work wasn't right. And be that in academia or be that in online, like I'd be shouting online all the time, and I was like, this isn't working for me personally, right? So being able
it's
to
harmful for you, right?
Yeah,
like,
so I think
people aren't.
But this conversation, like this is the first time I'm sitting down with like people that I know, being able to talk in a room that is like queer-led, queer-run, in a very diverse space where I don't feel as though this is like extractive in the way that it has felt in the past when I've been on panels like this. And so I think that this is even something like a unique and new experience for me, where it's like, oh, I'm not feeling as exhausted as I would at the end of this because of the setting, right? Because this form is unique, but it's provided us with a space to do it and have these conversations in a way that is less harmful to us personally. And I think that providing those spaces for other people to also have that conversation, not necessarily on a panel, but just to have that space to be able to do it without fear, I think, of like participation, or the other side of it too, being like, well, I don't know what to do. I feel like just having those spaces first and foremost, constructed with that as the goal, is like one of the ways that we can also maybe move forward.
I think like some of us like touched on this idea of mistakes, and like perfectionism is really such a colonial construct that really protects colonialism at the end of the day.
With cancel culture, like I understand, like I've called people out before, I'm not going to do it anymore because it's just too exhausting. But with cancel culture, it doesn't let people grow. Like it's the best thing you can do for society when you're like, I messed up and this is how I'm going to make it right. Or like, I messed up so I'm going to try and do better. It's like we all make mistakes, we're all human. Like even as a disabled person, I've been ableist. As a person of color, I definitely have internalized like racism, and like that's not the problem. Not addressing it is.
Of course. So I also want to give some space for everyone else to also contribute to the conversation as well. If you want to chime in with your own thoughts, or if you have your own sort of questions about anything that we've talked about, would anyone like to chime in?
We have a question over here.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Thanks for the talk and for sharing so much, guys. My question is, I know we're talking so much about navigating performativeness, going beyond just like relationships that are formed around optics, and just how to like show up genuinely. But my question is, how do you find space for yourself outside of those conversations? I feel like dealing with being hyper aware of how you show up, how others are treating you, how you're interacting with people, whether at work or in personal life, can become so joy-sucking. So even whether it's like you're discussing it, you're actively facing it, or you're in your personal time unpacking it, when do you find time to be outside of the demands and the restrictions of having to exist as a person that's marginalized?
I don't think white supremacy or poverty allows for that for most of us. And so I think, again, it really comes down to like just recognizing that unfortunately is my reality, or at least this is how I do it. I recognize that unfortunately that is my reality. It's like when I wake up, this is my existence, and it will be
called into question in one way or another, in one form or another, and how do I replenish myself, my energy, my joy, so I can continue on, right? And it's like, again, I have found myself incredibly apathetic, retreating, not wanting to share, not wanting to engage, and it took me a long time to be able to like actually come back out and sit here on this panel. And I think that ultimately it comes down to what are those tools that you have in your utility belt to replenish your joy, right? Is it binging a whole season of anime that you've watched nonstop? Is it going on a little hike and looking for birds like they're Pokemon? Like, is it just sitting down with a friend and playing a board game until you both fall asleep? Like, what are the little ways that you can really like just punch that joy back into yourself, because it is going to be continuously extracted. None of us are the beneficiaries of this white feminist capitalist system, unless any of you all are like heiresses here or like the royalty. I don't know. Some of you are beneficiaries. Don't think that you're not. But for most of us here, it's not the case. So it's just recognizing that as reality and moving through that.
Yeah, I find this is like so difficult, but really, white supremacy can really get us down, has gotten me down so hard and so low, but at the same time, it's like the things that lift me are the things that about my culture that are so different than whiteness, like my kinship with other indigenous people, the fact that I'm a better dancer than most white people, these little bits of joy that you can find, like, that I'm like, yeah, okay, this is the thing that I have that's supremacy over whiteness, my familial relationships, my queer relationships, like all these things. I think that is so important. You have to really remember those, what do I have that is more supreme than whiteness?
I feel like it's just exhausting, and I accept that this is my life and this is my reality, and I'm leaving a legacy that might not be exactly what I want it to be, but it's at least like I was raised in very white, very awful living conditions, and I used that as a way to not parent. So the way that I parented my son and continue to parent him is like with this view that like it's gonna suck and we're gonna be really broke and exhausted and we're gonna feel angry, but that's okay. It's not on us. Like I try to like forgive myself for when it's hard because it's not my fault, and also try and turn everything into a lesson. So like, even the worst relationships that I have, the ones coming into my mind is this person that I didn't date for very long, but the breakup was awful. But like the one thing that I was connected to through that relationship was that's the first time I watched Hamilton. And now I've watched it 27 times, and I will literally, last night I went into the bath and I sang like half of the soundtrack, and my son put on his sound canceling headphones, and then I came out and I was like ready to be a person again. So I don't know how to, like, you have to self-determine that if there's something that brings you joy, that fills you up, if there's a friend that you can call when things get tough, if you need to go to the hospital and you're like, damn it, what is the thing? It's like you just go through the motions, and you have to rely on, the self-care that has like kept me alive for 43 years,
Yeah, ditto to everything all of you said. I'm like, I have this image, like when you posed the question, was like, it's all around you, but like, what's the little like bell jar I put around my head to be like, oh, everything's okay? And usually it's something sensory and tactile, and I think it like just brings me back into my body, and it's often like making myself a meal, and usually that meal is rich in flavor, and it's even better if I can feed someone else. Like even to extend and share the meal with someone else, and then laugh about how white food is bad, and yeah, my skin is beautiful and I can dance.
We both have really weird, needy dogs, and they really get us through.
Yeah, and also just like, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want me to? I'll bring the mic over to you.
Thank you. My question is, how do you talk to white people about like the extraction, emotional labor, and exhaustion you feel? For context, I work in peer support for queer young adults, and I'm the only BIPOC person on a team of 6 people. Everyone else is white, and I don't know how to talk to them about the tokenization I feel, and I'm scared that I'll be like losing friends and connections, and I don't know if I can actually trust them to accept me as who I am as a queer, BIPOC, and disabled person.
That's a great question. I feel like I've done kind of two routes, so I can speak to the outcomes of both. I've done like the yelling and being very loud route and being like, this is just calling it out. And I've also done the like, let's patiently sit down and analyze like where you're coming from first so that I can gauge how much information I share. In my experience, in a work setting especially, I think you really need to look for what is most sustainable for yourself in the long run. So if in the long run, right, this is a job that you need, this is a job that you cannot afford to not have, I think how do you look at making that space safer for yourself? Now, ultimately, there are workplace checks and balances that are in place, so I wouldn't necessarily start off by being like, well, I'm going to go to the boss, and I'm going to say that you're making me feel excluded. But I would definitely start by being like, at least especially in a workplace situation, looking at ways to have more controlled one-on-one conversations with individuals where you don't necessarily need to explain your whole identity and your whole ethos of being, but you can bring like specific instances to them that you can then use as like a sort of springboard to talk about larger emotions or trends that you see happening. That being said, yeah, you do really have to gauge it, because in a workplace setting, you really need to think about longevity and what is sustainable for yourself and thinking about your own safety, right? Yeah.
I think I've done all those things, and I really like suggesting like podcasts and books to people when I don't want to be the one to really do it. Some people aren't going to listen to you, but they will listen to these other voices. And I'm a big reader, and I suggest a lot of books, and sometimes I very covertly or uncovertly am being like, this is a book that's going to help you be less racist and less shitty to me. Like, I mean, for me, like, I suggest like Adrienne Marie Brown a lot, different Indigenous writers, but just having that kind of repertoire and like ready, and yeah.
I feel like I've also used like the podcaster book thing, and now that Spotify, which I know is awful, but I'm going to eventually get off, but within Spotify there's like audiobooks, so I'll be like, do you know the future of disabled is an audiobook on Spotify right now, we should read it together. And then again, but that's like one of like 7 strategies. And like you judge what you can do at the time. You can call people in and have the one-on-one. I've learned now that you cannot bring up race. You have to bring up power imbalance, and people understand that more when I'm like, I feel like I'm being treated this way. You can do calling out. I've posted resignation letters with no shame on Facebook before I even send them to my boss. And then you get support, like every comment, everything that like people will say, like they'll leave the conference that you brought them into in solidarity, because they're like, I don't want to be there because you're not there. And like that can start a really cool chain reaction with people. You can do absolutely nothing and just try, like, so the third or fourth strategy is like to not do anything because you can't put the job in jeopardy, but finding like a source, a friend who is disabled as well and who has experienced the same thing, and just be like, hey, like I think you might have gone through something that I've gone through, so if you want to talk about it, we can talk about it. And then again, just like self-care or whatever they call it, taking care of your own needs matters the most. So whatever you need to take care of yourself, like that is what you should be able to do.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. It was like whatever is going to safeguard what you need is what I would suggest doing. Or also ideally, maybe there's a white person who's able-bodied that you do trust that you could talk to, and then they could do the work. Right, because they want to, because they're a good ally.
And also just like, I love that. I feel like more white people need to be throwing paint, because I'm not an arrestable body anymore.
And also those people are probably more likely to handle the conversation in a different and probably more like level in way than it comes from being like, you're telling them and they're like, oh, I'm not racist, I'm not ableist. Like there's less, I think, defensiveness when it comes from someone who they deem as like, you're just like me.
And I think it's also important too, like, because this is something I've learned, because I feel like often in the past I've been very reactionary, and so I think something that at least has helped me is like taking stock of yourself and being very honest with what you have the capacity for and what you not only are what your boundaries are, but what you would feel comfortable, especially within this context, like if within a workplace setting, right? It's like, I know for myself, like, instead of reacting to everything that I would hear that would make me uncomfortable in past workplace settings, I pivoted to understanding that when I'm at work, like, that is a factor and I'm not willing to engage with it. So that is like, that's how I was able to get through it. But it all depends on, again, what you're really able to, like, be honest with yourself in terms of what you have capacity for. Yeah.
My mom always called it, like, don't waste your energy on the racist uncle or the transphobic uncle at Thanksgiving or Christmas or, these different things, because you're just going to be running in a circle and ultimately exhaust yourselves.
But I don't know. That's just really quickly to say, like, yes. Yeah. But also, some of y'all do need to talk to your family members, okay? I'm sorry, you are not absolved here in this chat of doing that difficult work, because I know that sometimes within a work setting, it's like easier to take stock and be like, okay, well, what am I willing to engage with? But I think that we all have, like, an obligation to each other that we're in community with, but especially to our family members, which is tricky because I for myself, I'm a childhood runaway, so I haven't, like, spoken to my family in, like, I don't know, a decade and a half, but I feel like it's still very important to try and do the work of, like, people that you're very intimately connected with, trying to express not only yourself and what you need to feel safe, but, like, the ways in which maybe that they are causing harm and how you can maybe course correct that behavior. It's not necessarily saying that you have to do the work for all your relatives. I'm not preaching that, but I do think that some of y'all do need to do the work.
Thank you.
I just want to add one more thing, sorry, is like, yes, for family that needs to be pushed a little bit to look at the world in a different way. And I'm pretty estranged from my family as well. I was kicked out at 14, and that's probably, I should have been kicked out at 8. That would have been more of a kindness. But, like, my dad is still trying to be a grandfather to my son, so I still end up seeing him, and he'll always say every year, Happy Thanksgiving, with a bunch of commas. And I was like, I'm not letting it stand this time. And I'm like, it's actually, like, Indigenous Peoples Day. And then I sent a picture of the Christopher Columbus statue that had red paint and said something like decolonize, blah, 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 blah. And I sent that picture to him, and then I said that, and he was like, okay, Happy Indigenous People Day. And, like, that's movement in 70-something years.
Yeah. In small ways, it really can. Sometimes it really is just like hey, you're actually causing harm. Stop it. And then sometimes it can result in a change. But anyway, back to workplace.
Thank you so much. We have a queue of 3 questions so far, and sorry to bring up the colonial construct of time, but we do have another 10 minutes for the questions. Thank you all so much for your patience and for sitting so well. We have one online. Michelle, do you want to read it?
We have 2. So just quickly, Paisley, you had mentioned a book or a podcast. Can you reiterate what you recommended?
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of my teachings from Adrienne Marie Brown. Wrote Emergent Strategy, which is really good, and Pleasure Activism. Both have really helped me with my own activism journey. And also recently wrote a really interesting, shorter book called We Will Not Cancel Ourselves, really about how to continue our own movements. And Adrienne Brown also has a really good podcast with their sister called let me find it one second.
Well, I might just plug some of my resources as well. There's this incredible podcast called Hood Rap to Head Rap, and it's by Ebony and Erica Hart. They're just both incredible people that have helped shape also my activism. But then if you're looking for something like a different form of media, Carolyn Whitaker has wrote this really great book called White Spaces, Black Faces, so looking at ways in which Black people are trying to not only reclaim their connection to the environment, but the ways in which some of these more nuanced conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion happen within the sphere of environmentalism. So, yeah.
The podcast is How to Survive the End of the World. Talks to a lot of different community leaders from kind of our different sectors we've talked about. And they call it a podcast that delves into the practices we need as community to move through endings and to come out whole on the other side.
Yeah, thank you. So we have a question to all the panelists here from Shivi. Is there an anti-capitalist / corporate structure that you have found that has been close to what we should strive for in so-called quote-unquote DEI, or any framework/model that is close to the work looks like? This question is for anyone.
Yeah, I do have an example. I worked at a 3-day conference called Lawyers Against Transphobia, and I was on the safety team, and this conference went over and above. Like they let us tape up the curtains to this was a nice hotel too. They let us tape the curtains to the window because they were getting stuck in the wheels of my walker. We were moving furniture around. Any issue in regards to like a power imbalance between either panelists or people was dealt with well. Every single session had active listeners. There was a note-taking skill that I've kind of tried to adopt in my own chaotic way, where instead of the information being treated as like a slide deck, it was all like drawn out, and it had elements of like the picture of what this was happening, and it always had a quote that you could come back to if you were trying to center the intent of the message. And at the end of these 3 days, it was so sad because for 3 days, you remember, right? It's beautiful. We still talk about it. I've talked to people that I didn't even know were there, and in other meetings, they'll be like, oh, this Lawyers Against Transphobia conference, they really did everything they were supposed to. They really, I can't even, and you know what? The only reason that it was so well done is we had like 9 hours of training. Like we went to the site and we walked through emergency exits and we figured out what to do. It took a lot of planning and it took a lot of hours, but they paid us for it. So it was like, this was something that it actually benefited my life. The friendships that were formed being in that space of being like, did that just happen? Like and like seeing trans people come out from all different areas, all different provinces, and they were using their pronouns and their names for the first time, and like we instilled that safety for the participants by working our ass off, and we got paid for it, and we became like, I don't know, like this like family that's like, we still reference the beauty of that. And like those stories, I will always focus on that. It's like rose-colored glasses, but you know what? Like that's at the end of the day, to see something done so right and so well, you know it's possible. If you don't see something, you can't dream something. If you can't dream it, you can't create it.
I mean, I'm so lucky to come from this Squamish Nation, to have ancestors that held on to these traditions. And when I go into my community, it's so different. We have these very different practices that I think, work so well. One of our sacred laws is Chenchen Swai, and it's to hold each other up. And that's literally a sacred law of this land. And you see that in action. So a Squamish practice is not, how much you own. It's like, how much do you give? And that's not just money, that's how much do you give to your neighbor, how much do you give to your cousin, to someone that you don't know, how much can you share? And we're very giving people by nature. And then something else that I really love, that I think is so anti-capitalist, so anti-colonialism, is it's a very different, there's not really the same hierarchy that we have here of positionality. So we're forum people, we're people who still vote, there's a lot of referendums, and we all come together, and there's not the positionality. So I've seen someone who is literally, a Harvard law graduate, they have the same amount of time to speak as the person who goes and collects bottles on a reserve. And, they're given the same amount of respect. And I just think that is, just such a beautiful act.
Hi. Let me try this on for size. First of all, I just want to say thank you for sharing all your perspectives and so on. And it kind of, listening to you all, it kind of made me hurt a little bit to feel how much suffering you've gone through, right? And I think that, the fact that we're all here, we survive, we thrive, in predominantly a white culture, it also means that we're fluent in white. And I think sometimes we forget that unilingual and monoculture is monotonous. And a lot of us are fluent in white in more than one culture. So we need to embody that as a commodity, right? I once sat through an arbitration where I wasn't happy with my buyout. I just said, write this as if I was white. right? And it came back to my satisfaction. And you know, I think I'm privileged. I acknowledge that. I had my share of suffering, but I've always, I guess the advantage of growing up being multilingual, multicultural, and I'm fluent in more than one culture. I'm comfortable living in more than one continent. And the most of the civil servants that I work with, the only way that they have been outside of the province or the country is when they travel in sort of like all-inclusives, right? And I look at that and I say, you know what? No. I am added value. I'm white and more, right? And I think like sometimes we forget that. Like we all have that in this room. So I just want to share that because I think that, our suffering is our added value, right? And sometimes we forget that that's what we possess. So I just want to share that because you all made me think of that.
Thank you for sharing that. I feel like, all of us sitting here, we have this lived experience that gave us skills that we did not think that we would have to have. And it gave us a perspective to be able to use those skills. And if anyone's wondering what a great place to start is when you're talking about accessibility, write a list of your skills out and see what can be used in what areas, because everybody has skills. Even if you don't, I dropped out of high school in grade 10 and I had my baby. So I have a high school education now, but anything beyond education works as well. If you've asked someone to write a perspective as if you were a white person, that's a skill. That's you communicated that and followed through with that. Yeah, and I think, we all get to survive sometimes, and it would be nice to thrive. And I don't know what that looks like for me personally, but I know that surviving is fine. If it's not going to get better at any point in time, I'm still going to be the person I am,
Yeah, I think there's sadness and hardships, but being on this panel with all three of you, and I've known you all for a really long time, I know all of your smiles so well, and I've got to experience your joy in so many different instances, and I think that's such a power,
I think probably, how do I say this? I think that yes, in the ways for many of us have had to learn the language of whiteness or the culture of whiteness or being fluent in whiteness. I think a lot of us have done that as a means of survival, and I just think that for why we feel that we need to do this work or why this work is a part of our ethos is because we envision a world where that isn't necessary for your survival, right? Where that being perfectly fluent in the many ways in which white culture demands purity or the erasure of contributions from black and brown bodies to all the different ways in which it controls you. I think that we are trying to actively push against that, but not necessarily every day, but just by being. And I think that hopefully together we can shift into a world where the next generation doesn't necessarily have to learn that same language in order to feel accepted or accommodated for or included. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And so next, we're going to, are we still doing this group activity?
Penny
was
have to say.
Yes or no?
Penny's been real quiet.
Are we doing this?
What do you have to say for yourself?
Vision board. Are we doing this vision board? I've never made a vision board before, so I'm excited to see what this is going to be.
I think it's online, right?
Yes, it's
Scan.
online. Hold on. So let me. That's so yeah. Okay. So here.
It's like a digital whiteboard, I think.
It's like a digital whiteboard. Yeah. Next slide. And then if you want to join in via QR code, it'll it's like a word cloud, so that people online are also contributing as well. Pao, can we move to the actual website that I shared?
For anyone trying to scan it, you can go to menti.com and then enter your card.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Travis.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Menti experts.
I know everyone in this room.
Do you all know each other?
Yeah, we're all best friends.
Wow, what is this?
Okay,
This community.
so enter the code is.
Oh,
Oh, is it?
oh, it went away.
Yeah, it's scannable.
Wait, did the
Yeah.
QR code not work?
It got cut off on the screen.
Yeah, leave that. Yeah, yeah.
Leave that, yeah.
Okay.
And then I'll pass my laptop to Chris to summarize what you're seeing.
Sure.
Here. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, you can't project it out?
I think we're okay. The code is 219.
Love that.
Hold on. Hold on. Is it?
Oh, view the result. Yeah, it does work.
Yeah, view the results. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Sorry, 219. No, it's not. But there you go. So basically, this is what people are saying, what the future looks like, and how we move forward. And so, feel free to contribute to this collective visioning board.
219 is just the code.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we need to send some product feedback. Why is the code in the center? So what, do the colors mean anything?
No, they don't mean anything, no.
So everyone's responses get projected up?
Yes, and aggregated.
Okay. And aggregated, okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
And so what happens if multiple people answer the same question? It gets bigger.
It gets bigger. Yeah.
Okay, I remember this now.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember this.
Yeah.
The word clouds.
The word cloud, yeah. But it's not really updating. Here, can you, refresh? There you go.
Oh, yes. Okay, now it's, now I'm seeing, I still don't understand the 219, but.
No, no worries. Just ignore that.
It's a secret code. We're all getting 219 tattoos after this.
Cute.
219.
We're actually not calling it DEI anymore. We're calling it 219.
219. So accountability seems to be the. Oh, actually, I don't know. Maybe solidarity looks. I don't. They all look like the same size to me.
Community.
Is it just my eyes?
Wow, there's 53 people participating in this board right now.
How many people participated?
54.
Oh, 54. Wait, that's not everyone in this room.
Well, I mean, not.
So not everyone. Some people here are not participating.
There's some people written in looks like Korean, Hangul, as well. We love that. So, Chris, what do you make sense of what you're reading right now?
I love the abbreviated.
Lots of things about community, wanting white people to speak up and do the emotional labor. I assume accountability means towards white people. So, there's solidarity, softness, lots of communication. I can't see too much. Look to indigenous ways. I actually think some of these like smaller fonts actually have some interesting things in there. Any thoughts?
I love this. White people do emotional labor. That is, that's a great way of saying that. I think. I mean, yes. Predominantly.
But can they do it?
Can they? I think I think yes. I think everyone can, right? And I think that while white people have the predominant responsibility, we all have some responsibility in one way to another, right? To ourselves to do the emotional labor of trying to like improve, conditions for ourselves and others. So I like that one.
Sorry. Also, like participation looks like a lot of things. All of us that are just watching the screen right now, you're participating in a way that makes sense for you. I'm not going to turn around and look at it because I'm a disabled person and it hurts to turn my back like that. But like I know it's behind me and I know y'all are looking at it, and I think like that's meaningful.
Yeah. I like this little word clump here. You have like community care, communication, reciprocity, kindness, healing, and kinship, and those all really do clump together for me.
Yeah, and then there's like community practices and community above, like sandwiching kind of like the larger picture. That's nice.
Yeah, well, I was instructed for the end to like end off on a positive note, which we're not going to do because that is not what we should be asking here. But to maybe end on something to look forward to in the future. What is motivating you to just keep doing this? What's pushing you?
I will say
you don't really have a choice.
I will say this is quite the motivator. Seeing like genuine interest for these kind of conversations, for participating in this kind of work. I think that's a huge motivator for me, and I think that's also why I really moved away from doing it online, because it was like very hard to find that like connection with people who like genuinely wanted to like learn more, be in conversation with you. So this is quite a good motivator, like showing up for people that maybe in your community are doing this work, or people in your family, people in your lives. Yeah. Continue showing up. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, so many things. I mean, just the community in general. For me, it's also like my nieces and nephews, creating just kind of, a better place for them. I've my nieces and nephews are so cool. The generation coming up is so cool. My cousin, looking at, coming from the reserve, it's been, quite a homophobic place, and there's been a lot of changes. And I have a niece who's 12 who just came out, and that's so cool. And I can't wait to see what she does, and also that just there are spaces for her to come to, and I just think that that's so great.
I echo that. I think the next generation is they're badass, and I see my son is 25. I see him asking for his needs unashamed, and for him to show up like that, that's what the lack of trauma looks like. And I think we all have this ability to look at our own actions, look at what we're fighting for and against, and just, it's not even do better, it's be nicer. But I don't know if there's an actionable term to be just involve yourself in the solution, and if you are a part of the problem, just don't leave the part where you fucked up. That is something that I do all the time. I'm oh shit, I really shouldn't have done that. But we're human, and we can only do what we can do. And I wanted to read one last quote, if that was okay.
Of course.
So I used to use this. I worked for a nonprofit called Let's, and I left that organization because of a board that wasn't impartial, and tokenization, and gatekeeping my funds, and everything like that. But I like to start and end things with a circular motion. And this is one of the quotes that I would use to close out a disability justice corporate DEI setting. But I think this is one of my favorite quotes when it comes to disability justice. And it's by a woman named Leela Watson. And she says, "If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together."
Surely. Yeah, I think what motivates me is that it's being an accomplice to everyone in my community. It's the more we can make sure that we don't have to deal with everything we've been talking about just at work, the more energy we have to actually do the real work. That the stuff that we that shouldn't take away from our capacity to speak on other issues and make things better on a grander scale, like land back initiatives and ending the fucking multiple genocides that are happening right now, instead of having to deal with shit people at work who are going to be racist to you on a daily basis. It's
Yeah, I did not know what how this panel was going to turn out. I did not know what we were going to talk about, but personally for me, I got a lot more out of it than I would have never expected that. So personally for me, I want to thank all of you, and I think we should definitely deserve a round of applause. Yay, yeah. Thank you so much. Vancouver, you have been impressive. You have changed me once again.
I don't know.
You finally left Davey.
Wow. Toronto, we need to keep up, okay?
Navy Street gays versus the East Side queer. Like, we're the queers. We are the weirdos.
We can't lose to you.
Well, thank you for moderating and flying all this way.
Oh, no. Anytime.
Yeah.
Such a hard life flying, you know.
I think now we like awkwardly walk in front of everyone as they're still seated.
But there's also really
I think
DJ set coming.
DJ.
Yeah, don't move.
DJ. The dance floor's here? Are we dancing? Yes. Oh, okay.
Baby girl, but I refuse to. Baby, something I did do. But I refuse to stay.
Falling on the rooftop. Oh, baby, tell me why'd you have to go? 'Cause this pain I feel it won't go away. And today, I'm officially missing you. I thought that from this heartache I could escape, but I've run it long enough to know there ain't no way. And today,
Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming to Diversity as Commodity. I just want to announce that on Saturday, it's multiple people's birthdays, including our moderator Chris. Coinciding with that, we have our event Come to Brazil, and today only we can get cheaper tickets. They're $15 at our merch table where B is manning it. Take a look at our merch. Hope to see you there. We love to dance with you. See you later.
I already knew there was something inside of you, something I thought that I would never find. Angel of mine, I look at you, looking at me. Now I know